Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and everyone online as well. Thank you so much for our members for coming here. I hope this will be I'm sure this will be a really interesting session. So we have both Max and Gordana here from BetterSea, who are the two CEOs of the company. They will give us an explanation on the FuelEU market, the pooling arrangements, and how their platform will benefit you in dealing with all the credits for the FuelEU, as well. There is DK. As well as give an explanation on the benefits that you can get through NorthStandard by using the platform. So pass it on to Max.
Yes, perfect. Also, hello to the guy. General, thanks for having us, Captain. The idea is that this is more of an intimate session where I will not talk for 1 hour and you just have to listen. But we can have a discussion. You can ask questions throughout because this whole thing is quite new still. And we will go quite deep into it. So if you have any questions, just feel free to shoot out while I'm speaking. Just as an introduction also from BetterSea side, as said, Gordana and I are here. BetterSea basically created an end-to-end FuelEU compliance platform. We used to work both at Maersk in their decarbonization team, and then in October 2023, we decided to go with BetterSea. And since then, we were quite successful and can present today our FuelEU Market Insights. We will discuss a bit about FuelEU first. Here's the agenda in general. So we'll first do a quick recap of the regulation. And then we will talk about the most cost-effective compliance options because there are several that you can choose from. And we'll discuss what the commercial implications are. And then from there, we'll talk about risk and the complexities, because in contrast to EU ETS, FuelEU is a bit more complex when it comes to compliance and trading. Then we'll talk about our role as BetterSea. We'll do a quick product demo on an actual trade. And then in the end, we will go into different trading strategies as well as the FuelEU index. So here, basically what we have learned from the initial start of the market, from the trades that we see on the platform. And with that, I'll start with the regulatory recap. Generally speaking, FuelEU Maritime started in January last year and in this year. And basically, it's an addition to the EU ETS that we saw starting last year. What we address here is the well-to-wake greenhouse gas intensity of the ships. So in contrast to EU ETS, where you just buy allowances for the CO2 emissions that you have when you consume the fuel on board of the ship, here you actually consider the greenhouse gas emissions, so not only CO2, but also methane and nitrous oxides. And to consider the full supply chain of the fuel from well all the way to the consumption on board of the ship. Then on top, you just not only buy certificates, just like under EUAs, you are not buying EUAs, you are actually trying to be compliant with the regulation by reducing the greenhouse gas intensity of your ships. If you're not compliant, it comes with a penalty. This penalty is 2,400 euros per ton of VLSFO equivalent that you're above the target. That's a bit tricky to understand. So usually we say 640 euros per ton of CO2 equivalent that you have too much. Or you can also say per ton of HFO that you consume. It's about 62 euros that you pay extra. Now, there are several options of how you can comply with the regulation. On the one hand, you have shore power. Shore power, this is zero emissions under the regulation, and it will help you reduce your greenhouse gas intensity and stay compliant. This is, of course, limitedly available still in the ports, and you also need to have the infrastructure on board of your vessels. Then we have wind-assisted propulsion. For that, you would need to do a dry docking and install the CAPEX intensive technology. The other option is alternative fuels. This is somewhat easier to do as long as you have access to biofuels. Then lastly, you can do something that is completely new. This is called pooling. And this is the option that is easily accessible because you don't need to have any technical changes. You don't need to think about where to get a fuel, etc. You instead just group ships together. But as that is new, we'll start by exploring this. So what you see here is a case study. We have a tanker. That tanker has a HFO consumption of 29,000 tons that fall under the scope of the regulation. Accordingly, it has what we call a compliance balance. This basically showcases whether you are compliant or not with the regulation. If it's negative, such as in this example, you are not compliant. Any vessel that uses fossil fuels is not compliant with the regulation as long as it is not LNG. Now, because this vessel is non-compliant, it faces a penalty. And this penalty is 1.8 million euro for this particular example case. In contrast, we have now a vessel that is a container ship and that has surplus, because what it used is biofuel on top of the usual fossil fuel that it used. Because it used biofuel, which has a reduced greenhouse gas intensity, it has a compliance balance that is positive. And this positive compliance balance allows it to have over-compliance that can be sold. We will discuss that in a second, by the purpose of pooling. Because it can be sold, it also has a monetary value. In this case, the monetary value of the surplus that the vessel generated is 6.9 million euros. So in this case, the surplus is 6.9 million euro worth. Over-compliance, just for clarification, we often call also surplus. Now, we have an over-compliant vessel and we have an under-compliant vessel. We put these two together in what we call a compliance pool. And that is what we refer to as pooling. Because what will happen if we put these two ships together in one pool is that the over-compliant vessel will offset the non-compliance of the deficit ship. Which means once they are together in a pool, both of these are compliant with the regulation. Why is that the case? Because the surplus, so the over-compliance, is transferred through the pool from the vessel which has the over-compliance to the vessel that needs the over-compliance. If these vessels are from two different companies, then on top there would be a surplus payment from the deficit ship to the surplus ship, or from the deficit company to the surplus company. Because again, this ship helps this ship to be compliant and not pay the penalty. Therefore, there must be a payment because, you will not do it for charity. That's the concept of pooling. Any questions so far? Not the case. Now you could claim, is pooling actually the best option, or are you just telling me you should pool because you provide a marketplace? In case, you can calculate this. And we have done it for the case study that we have discussed. We have this non-compliant vessel here in the top. And as I already said, we have a negative compliance balance, and this vessel faces a penalty. This penalty, as I also mentioned, is 1.8 million. Now, if we discuss compliance cost, we need to discuss it on a full scope, which means we should not only look at FuelEU, but because the vessel goes to Europe, we also need to consider EU ETS. EU ETS, again, also comes with a compliance cost. In this case, 3.8 million euro, which means that this vessel, without doing anything, will have a total compliance cost of 5.6 million euro under the EU scope. Now, if you remember, we have three options to comply. Either we decide to not comply at all, pay our penalty, which essentially results in compliance, which would be 5.6 million. Or we say we go for biofuel. In that case, we would need to source the biofuel, and we would need to calculate the amount of biofuel we need in order to put this vessel down to zero when it comes to FuelEU. At the same time, biofuel will give us an improvement of our EU ETS cost, because under EU ETS, biofuel will come with zero emission factor. That is calculated here as well, which means that in a sum, the total compliance cost when using biofuel, just to be zero on FuelEU, will add up to 4.5 million euro when considering the S&P Platts index. The last option is pooling. Pooling, in contrast to biofuel, will not help you with your EU ETS cost. The EU ETS cost will remain as is, 3.8 million. But considering the current market, it will considerably reduce your FuelEU penalty, because you will offset it by paying the surplus price that you pay for the pool. In that case, assuming the surplus value of 200, which is actually the higher level of what we currently see being traded, you pay 4.3 million euros for this vessel in terms of compliance cost for the full year if you do the pool. So, in this case, pooling is the cheapest option in order for this vessel to be compliant with the regulation. And it's also, as I said, the most accessible one, as you don't need to source biofuel, etc.
You said B100 you use, ETS will become zero. That is because it is B100, right? But for other grades, there will be an ETS cost adding to it, right?
Yes. So these costs here include EU ETS and FuelEU cost.
Only considering B100, it will become zero in the case of ETS.
Yes, but we only use the amount of B100 that is required to put your FuelEU penalty to zero, which means you will not use the whole time by 100, which means you still have EU ETS cost, because you also use fossil fuel, for example. Any further questions? Okay, I'll make it easier, because this is now on a particular vessel, but in fact, you don't need to look at each of your vessels. You can think about it in a more broader scope. What I like to do is to calculate the compliance cost per ton of HFO equivalent that you consume, because that is unique, is like standardized for each of your ships where you will use HFO or any other fuel. Here you have, when you just pay the penalty, $258 that you pay in compliance cost for each ton of HFO equivalent that you consume, including FuelEU and EU ETS cost. Compare that to using biofuel. In this case, we assume Bio30 in Rotterdam. There you will pay $221 per ton of HFO equivalent of energy that you consume. So it's considerably cheaper than paying the penalty. Lastly, you can consider the pooling option. Here, in fact, again, considering the current market, you pay $208 per ton of HFO equivalent that you consume when you pool. So even on a more general level, you can see that pooling is the cheapest option to be compliant with the regulation at the current moment in time. Of course, always considering changes in biofuel prices and changes in the surplus value. That's why we can ultimately claim at the moment that pooling reduces your compliance cost by 20%. If you also include the fuel cost related to it, then in fact it reduces your total fuel cost by 8% compared to paying the penalty. I'll now go to the more tricky part. Therefore, I'll give you a moment for questions. in case you have any.
What are the factors governing that 208? So is it going to remain steady, or is it dependent on the biofuel pricing, or is it dependent on number of ships using the green fuels, or how do you fix that price there?
Very good question. In fact, the price for pooling is only dependent on the surplus value. So what would you pay in order to pool? Because we are not using any alternative fuel here. We use our normal fossil fuel, and we say on top we buy a surplus to pool with someone in order to offset our compliance. This surplus has a price. Unfortunately, in contrast to EU ETS, there's no central marketplace like the EEX where this price is visible. So the market is quite intransparent, and you will have to call a trader to figure out what the price is. And you can't be sure whether he will give you the right one. This calculation is based on 200 euro per ton of CO2 equivalent for the surplus, which is, as I said, currently the max of the range that we see where surplus is traded. But of course, you're right, it's dynamic. So if now the price would increase to 400 euro per ton, this will be switching.
Yeah.
No, so am I right in saying that if I use Bio30 as fuel and then I pool the vessel, the effective USDT would be just 13 USD per ton? Like I'm using Bio30 and then I offer my vessel into the pool.
Externally, so with someone else. Then right now, that would not be a smart commercial decision, because you are paying more for the biofuel than what you would get for the surplus. This may change in the future when the surplus price increases, but right now it's not the smartest decision.
I think that the question is, so you can use biofuel to cover your vessel or generate overcompliance. And once you generate overcompliance, then the question is, okay, what do I do with this? Can I monetize additionally? And then you put your vessel into the pool with others to whom you sell this overcompliance. And through that, of course, you can recover the cost or even make additional revenue. And in that regard, like you would look at the market prices in order to make the best out of biofuel. The biofuel is currently more expensive than pooling. So for you, it would be wiser to maybe wait in order to kind of sell that overcompliance that was generated by biofuel. But you can still use it to cover your vessel, that one, or your internal vessels if you want. At the current market prices, like pooling is a good option, even if you end up generating more, because you can still kind of cover yourself and the need, and then everything that comes after that you can use later, bank it for the next year, etc.
Yeah, that explains it. And just one more, may I ask, who's your target preferred customer base? The ones who are deficit or who are positive?
Usually surplus is more rare than deficit. As a marketplace, we of course serve everyone because both parties need to pool in the end, and therefore we are happy to invite any of the two.
Because my only question is, like you said, at this time, I believe, even your numbers possibly know that more vessels are deficit. So what if we end up with a pool with all vessels which are deficit in the EU? Then who would take the?
Yes. So important, and that goes into how we set it up on our platform. Important is that we do not create one pool out of all the participants that join BetterSea. In fact, we create pools for each of the trades that you have done. So you find someone with surplus on the marketplace, you bid on it, and then you, together with the counterparty that sold the surplus, create a pool. So it's not that the overall amount of participants needs to be equal in order to fulfill the validity of the pool.
And the one who has the surplus is kind of in power, because by doing the trade, you're combining your vessels. But if they have a lot of overcompliance, of course, naturally, they will be able to bring in more parties for that same vessel. And in that sense, they are the one expanding their pool. But in our platform, we basically allow every surplus seller to start creating their pools, right? So we, as BetterSea, provide platform with different features to mitigate these risks. But essentially, we are not the ones saying you need to go with this one, this one, this one, or bundling them all and aggregating them all into one, because that's also a big risk, because then you have to make sure that at the end of the year, everything or accumulated kind of works out. In this sense, it's much easier to handle like smaller groups. And then when the surplus owner is the one kind of being the pool manager, then and everyone else's responsibility is to deliver on their side of the promise, then it's much easier to adjust that risk. I think we will cover some of that later, right?
Mhm. Yes.
You mind going back to your previous slide?
Mhm.
Or the option that's in the middle by burning, I think the next one, there's one option burning 300.
This was here.
That's one slide.
Yeah, this.
Yeah, correct. Yes. So, is there any assumption that, let's say, if you burn 300, you will have surplus, right?
Yes.
Is that surplus taken into account in this case? And what is the price that's being calculated?
Good point. So the amount of B100 that is consumed puts the compliance balance of the vessel to 0. So this is the assumption.
Are you burning
Just to be
enough to be compliant?
Yes. So you don't have the surplus. You just consider how much you would need to consume in order to be compliant on spot.
This is back to the assumption that if someone has a deficient vessel, they're not the most adventurous, right? They just want to kind of go by.
Yeah.
So in that sense, they're okay, what's the minimum for me to reach this? Is that pooling or biofuel?
And pardon me if you're going to cover it, but the question is that the pool within the same owner, is that an option?
Yes. You can create an internal pool, which would basically mean the ships that you are responsible for. That would create a pool to offset all your ships. And then you can also create an external pool. So if the internal pool is not sufficient to offset all of the ships, you can buy in surplus to improve your pool in that sense.
Just out of curiosity, are there a lot of like surplus sellers out there? Because I'm thinking if I own a surplus, I would rather like bank it rather than sell it.
That's also a strategy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here, of course, you need to consider that the IMO will also come up with a similar framework, and then you can't be sure what will happen with FuelEU after 2028. So this could be a reason why you don't want to bank, or because you have increased OPEX costs right now, you want to offset them by selling the surplus immediately. So there are different reasons why you would sell instead of banking the surplus. But yes, absolutely correct. This is a considerable option.
Yeah, because just now, right, you're encouraging us to pool rather than, let's say, be compliant by burning biofuel. So, okay, every one of us will not burn biofuel. So who is the supplier? Where are we going to get it?
That's true. I mean, right now, you will not get the surplus, hopefully, from someone who uses the normal biofuel, because it, as we discussed before, it wouldn't be a smart commercial decision for them, as they would effectively lose money by selling the surplus. So right now, what we see, and we'll get to it also later, is that the sellers of surplus are more guys that use, for example, bio-LNG, because LNG by default already is compliant with the regulation and creates a small amount of surplus. If you then add bio to it, then you actually often come at negative greenhouse gas intensity. So you create a lot of surplus. and then you are able to sell it cheaper than if you would just go out and buy.
As of now, bio-LNG is the strongest.
Yes, the strongest surplus provider.
What is interesting is that there is this option of banking. So some companies opt to buy more, like to pool and buy more and then bank it for future. And in parallel, they can still continue with their strategy of using alternative fuels, but they use this to de-risk, like whether they will be able to access it in future, for example. So it's quite diverse in terms of strategies and how people think about it. So some are taking a more risk-averse approach where they're waiting, or they're on spot market and waiting to see whether they make the trip or not. Some haven't even made the trip, but expect one, but they're already like, okay, as soon as I get the call, as soon as that happens, I'm gonna buy and bank for future because they might need it in future. So it really depends of the risk appetite of the people dealing with it and also the companies.
On your last slide, if you were there. When you talk about this 208 USD, so suppose there are two different operators, and that cost of transferring also will add up here, right? From me to you or to you to me.
No, this is considered in the price. Yes. In general, I mean, this may be different between the trading partners you choose. On BetterSea's platform, we work with a commission fee that would then also cover pool verification, legal framework, etc. But we'll come to the abilities of the platform. And that, of course, is part of the pooling cost that you need to consider when you make the calculation.
Coming back to her point, you can have the surplus for only 2 years, right? I mean, it's not like, is it that you can have the compliance balance for kind of lifetime?
Yes, you can bank indefinitely under FuelEU, under the IMO framework, and may
5 years, 2 years. Yeah.
Also, there's the other option of borrowing. So instead of paying the penalty, you could borrow surplus from the next year. That is limited to 2% of the total exposure that you have. So that's also a questionable option.
Maybe that's when you reach just a little shorter from where you need to be.
Yes, exactly. So this usually you can use if there's any issue with the verification of data, etc., to cover this. All right. Since we talked about the more complex stuff, let's dive into the complexities and risks. My favorite part is the different stakeholders. So under FuelEU, the first question is, who is actually responsible for this? The regulator is quite clear on this. It's the ISM company that is responsible for compliance. In the industry, this is then differently covered. So I like to say that we create a responsibility chain, because often the ISM company passes it forward, for example, through the shipman agreement, to the owner. In that case, we need to be very clear that the regulatory responsibility, so the responsibility under the eyes of the regulator, still remains with the ISM company. It's just the commercial responsibility that has been passed on. Next part is the owner may transfer it further down the chain to the charterer. Generally, BIMCO came up with standard clauses for both charter party agreements and shipman. And it states that if the charter period is a minimum of 1 reporting period under FuelEU, then you would generally pass on as an owner the compliance responsibility to the charterer, which essentially means then the charterer is allowed to pool. Otherwise, if it's shorter, the owner would keep the pooling rights, and the owner would be the entity that is allowed to pool. That is because it's only allowed for a vessel to be in one pool per reporting period. So the idea was that there's a danger if there are two charterers, for example, throughout one reporting period, that they make two different agreements on pools with the same vessel, and then it ends up in two pools, which is essentially not possible. That's the idea of the responsibility chain. All right. Unfortunately, despite its trickiness, it gets even more tricky. So here we have the three guys that we just discussed, but there are more. We have seen that, for example, the shipbroker likes to engage in the whole trading scheme by creating pools between different parties, either by receiving pooling rights from a shipping company and then trading it on their behalf, or by brokering the deal between the entities. And we have the fuel supplier. They came up with an interesting idea of supplying alternative fuels that create surplus at a cheaper price, and then receiving the surplus rights of the vessel in return. So basically, they take on the risk of trading for the ship owner or the charterer. And then, of course, we have the EUA traders that already help you with trading EUAs. And now they figured out you also need to have help with surplus trading. So they try to engage in that as well. Of course, there are also even more exotic players. So, for example, we had an onshore power supply manufacturer who told us that they have pooling rights and surplus rights to trade. The trickiness with this is that essentially these guys often have no clue about the operations of the vessel, which fuel is consumed. They can't estimate where the vessel will go. And therefore, it's very tricky for them to actually make this deal. And it becomes even more tricky to find out who actually has the pooling rights down the chain. Because we already have three stakeholders in the maritime field, and then we add even more. And this creates a few risks, not only the pooling rights, but we'll start with those. If the pool is invalid, which can be any of a few scenarios. So, for example, the overall pool compliance balance is negative, then the surplus is insufficient to cover all of the ships in the pool and would be invalid. So it can't be used. And it creates penalties for all of the deficit guys within the pool. Another reason why the pool could be invalid is that a ship that is in this pool is in several pools at the same time, which is also not allowed. And that brings us back to our stakeholders. Because if you think we have now three stakeholders here in this example, they all believe they have the pooling rights, and then they go out and make deals to pool. This may not even be a fraud. Maybe they just didn't agree on the shipman and on the charter party agreement yet.
Pool is invalid means suppose you have one ship is not compliant, the whole pool is invalid. All the transactions also invalid, previous transactions?
Yes, so you will need to remove the vessel out of the pool, and then you can keep the pool reduced of this vessel as long as the overall compliance balance is.
In maybe first 6 months, he has traded some amount. So how that trade will be affected once?
So this is the danger if you trade for, let's say, 6 months. Then you need to be aware that what you have traded for these 6 months means that the vessel will be in this pool for the full year. So if you need more, the remaining 6 months, for the same vessel, you need to get it from the guy who sold you the surplus in the first place. Because you will be in this pool with this ship till the end of the year.
He will be making deals with the others also.
Yes.
So ultimately, maybe he will not be able to comply for the requirement.
Yes. That's why if you only have one vessel, that would not be a good idea. If you have, let's say, 20 and you cover the first 6 months, then if you need more later on, you create the second pool and then you distribute the ships between the pools so that both work out. But if you only have one vessel that would be exposed to FuelEU, then you will need to buy for the full year.
This one vessel cannot pay the remaining part of the penalty and comply with the pool?
It can in a very unlikely scenario where the overall pool compliance would still be positive. Yes. So
suppose the easy scenario of only one vessel is not complying, and he has already traded for some allowances, and only maybe few pool points or whatever it is, he pay penalty to the authorities. Then the pool can comply.
yes, as long as the overall pool compliance is positive or equal to 0, and the single vessel has a deficit that is less than what it had without the pool, it is fine, and the vessel will need to pay the remaining deficit as penalty.
Then think about it as like, if we are all individual vessels, now we're in the pool, right? So if you are a little bit shorter, but all of us are doing okay, we can absorb this delta, right? But you will still have a breach of contract with the original seller, one of us.
My contract with the pool is like I will be buying. So
Yes.
it is the other partners are defaulting.
So it's basically, we all need as a collective to be compliant. Let's say I'm a seller in this case, and I had a lot of surplus, so I made deals with each of you, in the example that each of you is bringing one vessel, or maybe a few of you are grouped, but I made several deals, right? And I saw you bought from me 2,000, and I had like enough, maybe I have a bit of a buffer, it's okay. Everyone else committed, like they all adhered to the contract, so they're all good, but you consume 2,100, right? If I have this buffer extra, I will cover your under compliance, so we'll be fine, but you will have to pay me for this extra, right? In a good, I may charge you more. But if I'm totally short of it and everyone else is okay, but you are below, then everyone else is gonna be at fault. Like the pool is collapsing, right? So everyone is gonna pay the penalties essentially. So this is why it's so tricky to keep it all aligned, that everyone is adhering to their deal. Or in the platform, how we solve this is that if you are below, you are able to ask the seller to get more. If they don't have, then we take your vessel out of the pool so that everyone else stays compliant. And then we help you get into another pool, and then we deal with the reimbursement and the difference in price, etc., without necessarily having to collapse everyone. But this is a risk that you don't see in our platform. So if and we see that also with different traders and brokers, like they think of it as a commodity, so they don't understand that there's this risk involved, and maybe they're trying to track, but it's one Excel. And then you don't know, and no one knows what will happen afterwards. They all like are in and hoping for the best scenario. Whereas, like again, we have the platform and maybe we are biased, but in a platform, everyone can see, and you can be proactive about this rather than arriving to the end deadline and realizing, whoa, and then it's going to be fun.
The trading ship owner may not be in complete control of the trading area. So he will be on the charter because vessels are subchartered and subchartered and subchartered. So suddenly even if you buy some surplus, suddenly the last 3 months is trading only in the EU area, then the quantity can shoot up drastically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to have the correct agreements in the charter party, because you should only give the pooling rights to the charterer if it's minimum 1 reporting period, then they are responsible. Otherwise, you have this carpet of different pools that are essentially not possible.
And there were situations that we faced like a few months back as well, where the owner and the manager, I think, they didn't have a contract between them. And then I think the manager made a deal with the fuel supplier. So the fuel supplier came with their vessel, and this was a surplus vessel, thinking that they have the rights to pool. But luckily, owner was also our client, and owner also was trying to upload the same vessel. So there were both, and we recognized that in the system, and we were like, oh, wait, there's the same vessel, something is wrong. Where's the contract between these two? And then we prompted them to figure it out, but they didn't. This was a mistake that was not done on purpose. They both genuinely believe that they own the rights to surplus, and only once we realized that there's the same intention to trade for the same vessel, we were able to stop it. Then they made a contract and told us, okay, this vessel will belong to this party. But it's just a simple example of how, because of this whole circus, things can go wrong even when they don't necessarily want to do the wrong thing.
Because it's a commercial opportunity, there's of course a lot of players that try to benefit from this commercial opportunity, and that's why there's a Wild West of who has the pooling right, basically. And it's essential to figure out who has the pooling rights before the trade can actually happen.
So, I mean, what we are trying to hear from you is that we need to be very sure when we are now moving forward, as we are looking at the charter parties, we need to be very sure that, the trading rights or the surplus rights or the deficit rights are clearly identified.
Yes, correct.
Because until now, to be very honest, you will realize charter parties are very charter biased. They're biased towards the charter because owners obviously have a ship which is idle. And this is like you mentioned, there's traders involved. So these traders are the people whose first priority is fixing the ship. And then it comes to the operators where, hey, do you have this? Do you have that? We figure out that later, right? But you mean to say that at that stage, we need to be sure that these things are in order?
Yes. And you need to be aware of all of the options that you can choose to comply, right? Because, for example, often we see charter parties where the charterer on a voyage charter, spot market, etc., agreed to pay the penalty to the owner, which is essentially wrong because this is the highest price you can pay for this compliance, right? The owner could then go out, pool, and make 440 euros per ton revenue. The other way around, it's the same, right? The owner should think, okay, if the charterer is not that smart, I'll invoice him the penalty and then I go with the pooling option and I make revenue, right? So no matter which place you are in, you need to know what is the best way to comply and what should I pay as my role in the charter party agreement. That's the pooling rights as well as the agreement between the two parties on what the settlement is.
I think you're right that the start is aligning and making sure that you know who has the rights. But then if you want to avoid kind of just being behind the curtain, you want to get visibility into what is happening as the year is progressing, especially if you are trading ahead of the deadline, right? And there's a reason for that, to de-risk yourself. But in that sense, you have to be reactive. Or like when we talk about these different options, it's not you have to do one or another. You can have the approach, okay, I have full responsibility over this one vessel, and I'm like the rest, I'm dealing with the charter. Okay, they will take care of that. But maybe for my own sake, I will pool and bank it so that if something goes wrong, I have a vessel to put it to, or I will use biofuel and generate over compliance. And I'll think maybe at the end of the year, December ends, maybe I can sell it, maybe I can bank it, maybe I can use it to like de-risk this other vessel, which kind of fell off the right path. And it's more about knowing what are your options and being able to diversify your approach so that you can take care of the risks. And then in that sense, we like to talk about this because we feel that because the market is so fragmented, there are all these players that creates confusion overall. And I mean, for us, we see a lot of that like already happening, and then they come to us from the reactive standpoint, like, oh, we did this, what now? And it's gonna be scary, I think, when we look at like December and then especially before the pools need to be reported, that will be a chaos.
So does BetterSea in any way help us as owners in this aspect? Because my question is, if owners can foresee it, we would already do the needful. But it's impossible to time the market in any way with respect to fuel prices or anything. So what edge? How are you better placed to help us or see what we can't see?
So we have different decision-making tools where you can calculate different use cases for different biofuel prices, etc. What is the best option? We allow you to see an index on the price of FuelEU surplus, because that is the most important part that you don't know right now, so that you can make a decision between biofuel and surplus. And then we give you visibility on the data of both the vessel as well as any stakeholders that, for example, would engage in your pool. Because in the end, decision making needs to be done based on the data. And you need to track the pool even after you have done the trade in order to make sure that it works out as planned.
So there are different features to add on to this, like at different parts of the journey. So in the beginning, it's more about informed decision making. So for that, yeah, there's a strategize and all that. And then there we also, when we receive the real-time data, then we are able to break it down on voyage based level. Also, if you are dealing with several counterparties, then we can set up the visibility so that everyone has the visibility, but only one has the executive power, or that the contract always goes to a certain entity for signature, but everyone else can have the visibility into what's going on. Then if you make internal pools, you can track what's happening. If you decide to build external pools through the marketplace or even through like private deal rooms, what we call, that's possible. And then there's, again, a way to track the pool, each participant, their vessels in the pool without commercially sensitive data being revealed. We allow you to like renominate the vessels in these cases where we see that you're going below what is agreed, etc. So there's a way to adjust this, and there is a standardized process when you engage in external pooling, like the contract, the financial setup. But maybe we can also, like we plan to demonstrate one of the trades, but maybe we can take them to show the platform. And also here we work with OceanOpt. Anil is here too, and they are like, we white labeled the platform, but they are able to also support you even like on the piece of the data before it even enters the platform, and kind of like taking care of that so that it is validated, so that you get the right data in as well. And Anil can also share more about. But the idea was to actually provide a lot of knowledge and functions so you can be able to make informed decisions and check things and align things and have a standardized process so that you avoid like these traps, I guess.
I mean, it might help to see some of the data. I don't know if you were planning to do a demo of the site, you know, some of the questions. Let's see how it plays out. Visualize it.
Maybe you have like
While they're opening it up, just one more question. The legal part and disputes. If there's a interest, I mean, we are talking about big money here.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would that be like? So it would, I mean, if there is a dispute between two parties for whatever reasons, known or unknown, would it be left to the owners or the charterers to sort it out, or you would have a role to play?
Yeah, so in our platform, like we created a legal framework. So we work with a London-based maritime law firm to do all the contracts. They're also somewhat related to the features in the tool, but here we go about all the liabilities for all parties involved. And usually the one that does not adhere to the deal reimburses the other party. But one way is like we have a deposit structure where the buyer places a deposit on an escrow account that is opened for each of the transactions. And then this money sits there until the year EU MRV data is verified and we know that what was promised was delivered. And only then we release the deposit and the remaining transaction happens after the pool has been verified. And that on one side protects the seller because there's a financial commitment. The entity doesn't just walk away from the deal. For the buyer, it's security because they don't lose the money until they know that the deal has been delivered. But now let's say the deal wasn't delivered. Let's say the surplus wasn't generated. What happens? Then in the contract, we define that the buyer gets back the deposit. We help them get into another pool. And the seller pays for the difference for like either the penalty that now the buyer incurs, or if they got into a different pool for the difference in price that they pay. And if on the other side, the buyer does not adhere to the deal, then the deposit goes to the seller and the seller, keeps the surplus so they can sell it again, but they get the deposit. So we do go about all these different scenarios in our legal framework. There are some sellers in the platform that also have their separate contracts that we indicate, but whoever joins the platform has already gone through the legal framework. And then if they do the deals with those standard indicated sellers, then it's quite faster because like everyone knows what they're getting themselves into. Now we see in the market that different structures also, like payments after 7-14 days after the deals. And it's like the market does what market wants. But in this case, you don't know what will happen afterwards, right? So you may end up doing a trade, but then your money is gone. And in a sense, like we do adjust it to the extent that we are able to foresee and to control within the platform features.
It means the platform itself is legally binding to the participants or the pool.
Yes, they enter bilateral agreements. Yes. Of course, like if things go wrong, then the next step is arbitration and so on.
Yeah. I mean, like just usual charter parties, we know we all try to be fair, but when things go south, I'm right.
Yeah.
And you would say you are right. And the question was, when that happens, I'm legally bound to go by the terms and conditions I had signed off initially, as I understand from you guys.
Yes.
And if still not happy, then we go the arbitration and the legality way.
Yes.
All right. Skip the risk. We directly come into the platform because the platform anyways addresses the risk, so we can discuss them here. In general, what you see is now that the platform is built up in different modules that basically lead you through the whole process, from decision making all the way to pool verification. Right now, you're on the dashboard, which gives you a quick overview. So here you have compliance balance for your vessels. You have the penalty in case you face any. You have potential surplus earnings. In this example case, we were very not lazy when it comes to surplus creation, so we have quite an amount. Therefore, we also have quite an amount of potential surplus earnings at the current moment in time. You see the fuel consumption across your fleet. And then this is one of the most important parts because, as I said, there's no central place where these surpluses are traded, appointed by the regulator. Therefore, the market is intransparent. And we provide you with the trading data on our platform so that you at least know, based on the trades that are happening on BetterSea's platform, what is the current good price that you should pay for, and you have certain transparency when it comes to the pricing. In fact, we just updated this, so I'm quite happy about how it looks. We have the ask price, which is the yellow curve. Now this is demo data, so don't consider the prices. And we have the trade price, the blue curve. So the surplus seller asks for a certain price, and then the potential buyer bids on it. And then they will agree at some point at the price that they both like. And in the real platform, you see, and we will discuss this later, that this ask bid spread is already coming together. So the price discovery of the market is improving. Right now, the actual traded prices are around 185 to 200 euros per ton.
Surplus.
Yes, per ton of surplus that you need. All right.
And maybe it's also worthwhile this delta between what sellers indicate initially that they want, like they start with 230 to 40, and then the deals happen at 185, 190. So it's quite significant.
Do you regulate the bidding process internally? I mean, sorry, what I mean to say is, I am an owner with surplus prices, and what prevents me from asking a very high price when I know people in the pool need it?
Well, at the moment, what we do, you can put, let's say you put 300, and it's okay. You will see that on the marketplace, but we will indicate that you want 300. We will also show this graph that shows to others, well, okay, these are the ask prices, but the actual trades happen much lower. So then they can send you a counter offer. Well, I'm not paying you this much. I can pay you 200. And then you accept or reject.
And now December is fast approaching, and I keep 300.
You can, right? So, like, we don't have that much rights to, police everyone, but what we can, it's market driven. It's an open market.
So it's open market.
It's open. So we list out all and we provide you with all the key information. But at the end, you're the one making decisions. If you're also desperate, then it is an expectation.
It's open market. Yeah, I hear you. Thanks.
But there is an index, isn't it?
Yeah. So
there's an Argus index.
And the Argus index is the abatement cost. So basically, for example, if you use biofuel, what would be the abatement cost instead of paying the penalty? There is currently no index except our own that is based on actual executed trades.
So we issued actually the first world's index based on the trades, and it was featured in Trade Winds just last week. So we intend to do this, and this is because we realize that other than that, people are referring to Argus, or they're just assuming what is the actual price and talking about it. So going forward, we will do the monthly announcements, like beginning of each month, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe like in the fleet overview, just like quickly either simulations and then also this kind of voyage-based breakdown for short-term charters.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the fleet overview is the next step. Basically, here you see all of the ships that you are responsible for and their corresponding compliance data. So right now, for example, here these are all non-compliant, as it states. And all our surplus is coming from some great 2 or 3 vessels that have generated quite some surplus here and are over compliant. And then you can basically deep dive into each vessel. And you see the underlying data that was used to calculate this. So you see the emissions, you see the fuel mix for that particular ship. And then here in the bottom, you have a breakdown. So if you, for example, are the owner, you have chartered it out to 2 short-term charters this year, you would want to know what is the contribution of each of these charters on the overall compliance status of the vessel. Therefore, you can then break it down. And in fact, per operator, now our charter operator is test 1. And then you see it on a per voyage level. So also if you have any reimbursement scheme in place with the charterer, you can use the data to request the reimbursement accordingly. Now, again, going back to what Gordana already said, there are several ways of getting the data into the system, depending on your own systems. And there we, for example, work together with Oceanaut to also help you on the part that comes before you enter the system.
You work with DNV Emissions Connect?
Yes, we are connected with that.
We are taking everything, all the emissions into account, like the CO2 as well as the methane and everything.
Yes, correct. So FuelEU is based on the greenhouse gas emissions, so all of these. And under EUETS, it's only CO2 in this year. Next year,
Dashboard where you see the pool.
so here you see on a vessel level which vessel is in which pool.
Overall pool.
Yes.
Yes, and that is here.
We were creating many pools, so maybe you will be shocked.
Yes, this is the demo version, so we are also testing.
Yeah, we were using it for trainings, and then everyone was creating pools.
So basically now you have plenty of pools. You may more have like 2, 3, 4. This is for example, an external pool, which means this is a pool with you and a counterparty, either traded or agreed upon separately. And then you also have internal pools. So this one, for example, is a pool that you have created with your own ships. It has over compliance that you could now sell, and then it showcases it's on the marketplace and also what you have put on the marketplace.
So once someone actually accepts your offer, you bid and they accept, you sign the contract, then this one becomes an external pool, and we merge the data so that you can track it and align it. Maybe there's an example. 222 maybe.
Yeah, so basically here you have now an external pool. You have your own ship in this pool, which is this one. And then after you have agreed, signed the contract, we combine the data of the entities that are in the pool so that you know the overall pool compliance balance throughout the year and you can track it. So here is the other party's ship that is also put into this pool. Important because throughout the year, this may be commercially sensitive. We do not disclose ship name and IMO number for the ship level data. But then you can track whether what you have agreed upon is already there. So let's say you would have been the entity that bought surplus from them, and now they have minus 149. You should track this pool going forward, whether they actually deliver the surplus that you bought.
It'd be better to like join a pool by end of the reporting period.
Then you don't know whether there will be enough surplus, because we already see some parties accumulating a lot because they want to play with the market later on or next year. So that is a wise approach. You don't need to worry about, okay, what is my non-compliance, but the risk is that there may not be enough surplus then.
So the
Buy it at 300.
Yeah.
yes,
Or
so
more.
there is currently a significant first mover advantage, so to say, because of the lower prices, but it would require you to sort of estimate how much surplus you want for the full year. And then we suggest that you put on a risk margin to cover any differences in your estimation. And if you then end up having more than what you actually need, well, then you can bank it on your ship and use it next year for your own purposes. In a different pool, yes. Every year the pool is resolved basically, and then there's a new pool to be set up.
Under your platform, who decides which ship to go to which pool? Like it's on a...
That's your decision. So basically you buy the amount of surplus. The agreement is not based on a particular vessel. The agreement is that you receive 5,000 tons of surplus. And in order to get these 5,000 tons of surplus, you need to put at least one of your ships into this pool. And then throughout the year, up until it needs to be reported to the database, you can put different vessels into the pool in order to take up these 5,000 tons.
Maybe this 220, is it, or 29, this green pool in the middle. Yeah, you can go there to show how they renominate the vessels.
So to enter a pool, you should know how much surplus you want.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have the calculator and simulator that would help you with that.
And then
as
you
well.
can park one vessel and later on put on more vessels.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Yes, you
And
sort of need the flexibility because anything can happen, right? It could be vessel needs to go to an unplanned retrofit, dry dock, whatever, or you didn't bunker the amount of surplus biofuel that created surplus as you wished, or there was an engine breakdown. You can come up with a lot of scenarios why there may be a change, right? And that's why throughout the year you should be able to change the vessels in the pool.
And you can show how you can
Yes.
renominate.
So that you can basically do here. We have an internal pool here with 3 ships, Gordana, Carsten, and Bio. And then we can basically renominate the vessels, which means we would then change the vessels. Here we have the pool creator. So these are the 3 ships that are in right now. And these are all your ships that you are responsible for. And now you can happily drag and drop the vessels around. So let's say we remove Gordana and we say we want to add.
When they're gray like this with blue, that means they're already allocated to one of the pools. You can take them out and use it. Of course, that will be reflected in the pool. So you have to go back and adjust that one.
Okay, we take Jens Axel into the pool. Then, of course, changes the overall pool compliance balance because now we have changed the values. And then we press next. We see an overview and we save it. And then accordingly, we now see that instead of Gordana, we have Jens Axel in this pool. So throughout the year, also if unplanned, some bulk carrier now suddenly goes to Europe, you can add them into the pool because now they are exposed to the regulation, whereas before they may have not been.
And here also, since this one is over compliant, then there's this graph kind of showing, okay, this is your opportunity if you want to. And then you can choose to put this pool, for example, on the marketplace or to invite someone to join your pool that you know maybe.
So the vessel which you dropped in was your own vessel or it was an external vessel?
Our own.
So when you invite an external party, how do they get notification?
Good point. So that's leading us to the question, how do we create an external pool? And there are in fact several ways of creating an external pool. On the one hand, you can do an invite. So let's say you know someone who works at Maersk and you guys have a beer and then you decide, let's pool. Then you could invite him through the invite function. So you create your own pool and then you press on
I think this one
invite.
is not because it's external.
Ah, yes. Yeah. Then you press on send invitation, which essentially means that in that moment, you type in the email and the name of the guy, you define the characteristics that you agreed upon over the beer, and you send them an email.
How do I know that he has access or not? The platform does show something?
You can send it to anyone, no matter whether they are BetterSea customer or not. So because what will happen is, it will allow you to track your pools in one platform, and the guy, even if he's not a BetterSea customer, will get a reduced screen. So he will not get access to the full-blown platform prices, whatnot, but he will get his own little pool that he has created with you, and we will take care of his data onboarding, the contractual framework, etc., just as if you would have traded with someone who is part of BetterSea.
And they will, and on that site, you will then be able to track both of you and to, like, they will have basic functions that are needed in order to make this pool compliant and to be able to also de-risk it on their side as well.
So the ask and the bid prices are all on external.
So
This is only the pool creation, right?
Yeah.
What I discuss with the guy I have invited is all on phone and other means, or is it recorded?
In the invite function.
Yeah, so
there are 2 ways.
basically, there are 2 ways of creating this external pool. One way is, let's say you belong to the same group, right? So your sister companies, and you know that you want to do it, but then this whole alignment, all of that is a bit more complicated. So then you would use the platform, you would invite each other, and because you know each other, it's a different experience. If you don't know anyone, then you will go to the marketplace. That's the second way of doing the pooling. And then in that sense, you go to the max, but the whole legal financial framework and everything that applies to both. So either if you do it through the invite function or through the marketplace, everything that we discussed is still in place and valid. And that's why you would use a platform to do it.
But the due diligence part, sorry, the clearance and the legality and everything which we were talking about.
They will do it, yeah.
Remains the same for
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
Either invite or, yes,
Yes.
either invite or marketplace.
So the price fixed and everything is sent out as a contract to the other guy for him to
Yeah.
sign and send back, and then the contract is locked.
Yes.
Yeah.
I bought 200 units from you for lock.
Yes.
We can also demonstrate how it works.
There's a nice little timeline, isn't there, as the contract progressed through? Can you pull that? It shows at what stage the negotiations are.
Basically, once you have agreed on a trade, and there's this standardized process and that we were discussing. Here we have an accepted offer. And then there's a standard workflow to go through this whole process after you have done the trade. The bid is accepted by the counterparty. We send out the corresponding standard contract automatically via email to you and the counterparty. You sign it electronically. It has all the details of the two companies, the trade details, prices, etc. Then we get the information that you have signed the contract on both parties, and we start setting up the escrow account that Gordana was already talking about, which is also automatic in the platform. We have a partnership with the Citibank that sets up these escrow accounts that are transaction specific. Then the deposit is placed on this escrow account, and then we all wait until the EUMRV data verification happened, and both parties can be sure surplus exists as planned, and the pool works out. Then the deposit is released to the seller, and you can initiate the pool verification. The pool verification can also be done in the platform. It's streamlined as we have a partnership with Verifavia to take up the pool verification of the pools that have been created. Once the pool is verified, the remaining transaction volume is to be paid from the buyer to the seller direct.
The power is that one action leads to another, and because like when we are onboarding, we do the KYC of the entities and everything, and that initiates some of these activities so that the escrow, you don't have to wait for 3 months like you normally would. It's open within 7 days of the signature. So one action leads to another, and then that guides you kind of through the journey so that you don't have to deal with it yourself.
I mean, I'm happy to give all my KYC details, suppose, and all the due diligence documents and my MRV data, everything I would give. But what if that friend we were having beer with, who is a dark trader in Dubai, who does take on? Because I will not declare it, right? I'm coming from the sanctions and OFAC perspective here, from the legal part, because I will never declare that coming up, and I will not say. So is that part of your due diligence perspective?
Yes, because then the new guy that you invited would also need to go through our KYC, etc., to make sure that he is a proper entity to
So
trade.
you have means to do a OFAC check and sanction checks.
Yeah.
Because that may be, as you mentioned initially, there could be so many parties involved to just me.
Yes.
So all those parties would have to be ticked off.
Yes.
For that I'm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And also we are doing one integration so that we can screen it also and tell you, okay, this entity is sanctioned, or they have a vessel that's sanctioned, but not the entity itself. So this will be added to the platform so you can decide, okay, I want to get into this or not.
But if the party has entered into a pool agreement somewhere else, that would not be known to you, right?
There's a limit, yeah, to how much we know, unfortunately, yes. But this is, I think, the problem of the world.
Yeah.
But in the agreement that you sign, both parties sign that they have the pooling rights for the vessel that they allocate to the pool, and that the vessel has not been pooled somewhere else.
That helps you you eventually have to take it to court.
But since you're acting like an index maker here or a market maker, the question which he asked, don't you think you should have a percentage limit for the bid and ask prices? Tomorrow, all the sellers decide that they will ask 500.
I mean,
From the
some
ask,
form of
there should be some control, right? That it would be 10% or 20% above the ask price, or per day you cannot increase so much, some sort of control. Because tomorrow, if they realize coming December, January, normally in March is when you declare your pools, and suddenly in March everybody says I'm going to sell at 600. What would be the control here?
maybe just a takeaway
Yeah.
for you guys. Because right now we understand the whole
It's
market is
low,
an open
yeah.
market. This can happen.
Maybe it's a
Maybe
good idea. Maybe we can.
that, you've introduced some form of regulation, which could be a selling point at some point of time that because it's not available in the open market right now, and it can actually be done in the next 2 years. We don't know. Right now, it's too infantile to, come up with anything like that.
You want to demonstrate the trade?
Okay. All right, now we're going to the marketplace, so the second option to make a trade. If you don't know anyone already that you want to pool up with, then you basically have an overview of all the surplus sales on the platform. So you see how much surplus they offer, then the ask price, so the preferred rate, and then the deposit that they would like to have on the escrow account, which can be defined by the seller. Minimum is 10%. And then, since we have discussed all of the other profiles that potentially can have pooling rights, we indicate whether it's a ship owner or operator versus someone else, like a fuel supplier, for example, for your decision making. Next thing is validated data. So if we get the data from, for example, the verifier like DNV Emissions Connect, then that will be a tick. Otherwise, it's a cross. All of these things don't prevent anyone from trading, but it indicates to you that you can assess the risk and how well you can track the data of the pool afterwards once you created it.
But the crossmark is validated by a verifier, but you should be having some data with you to even put this as a option for.
Yes, there always needs to be data uploaded in.
So your system would have already validated this. It is only that crossmark it is not validated by a verifier, correct?
Yes.
We can accept the data in various ways. So we can connect APIs directly to internal systems.
The quantity which is being declared as for selling or buying has been verified from your side, right? When you put a crossmark, it means that it has not been verified by class, but your system would have already verified what is the quantity they are offering.
But that there's a limit to that. We can't fully know. So what we can know is when we get the data via an API from one of the verifiers classification societies, these are voyage-based pre-validated data. So based on that, we know that, okay, this exists, right? But
correct, but because Emission Connect, not everybody would have opted.
Yeah.
Raw data coming from whoever is the seller, that should have passed through your system to say that this is almost nearing to what he is claiming to sell. Some sort of authentication that I'm going to enter into an agreement with this guy, and at the end of the year, I find out that what he has declared is his data doesn't correspond to that actually.
Is your API from the classification society?
So we have various ways. We can we connect to, I think, 6 or 7 verifiers. Most of them not with Bureau Veritas and ABS is pending. Everyone else is connected. We can connect to the APIs of the company's internal systems, and we allow manual data uploads, OVT file, and there's an Excel template. Now the trick is that I see where you're coming from, and I think that is the ideal scenario. Unfortunately, the companies are just not there yet. So there is this discrepancy with also what we would like ideally to have and kind of like where the market is in general with this. Some of them also don't even get like the proof of sustainability on time, etc., with which they can claim that, okay, this surplus is fine. There's a delay there as well. So that prevents us to fully addressing it in the way that you suggest, and I agree, that would be great. But I don't think we are there yet as a market.
Which is why we need other risk layers, right? So the contract, the escrow account, etc.
So that's why also, like, if it's a tick, then we would encourage people to bid on that, for example.
So when you say the deposit is by the buyer, right? The seller, the
Deposit.
seller has only the contract with him to binding him.
Yes.
The buyer has put in the money. Okay.
This is already one pool you're showing, yeah? Or
These are all pools basically. So if you would bid on this guy, then you would create a pool with this guy. If you bid on this offer, you would create a pool with this guy. So it's separate pools based on the offers.
And then it says, okay, this pool has space, so max, like compliance balance, 13,000, no, 15,000. So here I know, okay, I can enter this pool. They have quite some surplus left, and they ask for 250
Yes.
per ton of CO2 equivalent.
how many, we can see how many vessels inside that pool?
You can't see right now. So this is the initial screening part, and then you can bid to join that pool. You don't see at this point how many ships. We can maybe discuss that in future, but at this moment and right now as it is, you can't see how many ships are inside.
So if someone will, let's say, bid 2,000 of this, then if they said yes, then tomorrow this is going to be just 13,000.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So basically, you may not know how many ships are in this pool, but you know that currently in this pool, 15,000 are free. So as you correctly said, if you would buy 2,000 now, then tomorrow it would show 13,000.
This compliance balance surplus is existing, right? It's not promised.
No, so this is existing, but again, based on the question that we had before, there's a limit of how well it can be verified. Yes.
The data verification part.
Yes, because like even DNV cannot verify it until March 2026.
So this 2 to 4 pool with this little star, they have 2,500, 250. Okay, is ideal scenario. How much they want to get? 10%, and it's validated. So this pool seems legit. So we are getting data from.
Once you enter the pool, who decides that ask price and the bid price? So pool is like different owners coming together, right? So the software decides the bid price, or how does the pool decide on I'm going to sell at this price?
So the seller puts out the.
But that is a pool, right, of different companies.
Yeah, but the seller is the guy who has the surplus that he can.
On the individual ship.
Yes.
In the pool.
Only one surplus owner in one pool.
Ideally, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so he decides.
Yes.
Whoever has the maximum, he decides at what price within the pool. Okay.
Yeah.
You basically buy into his pool, sort of.
Sorry, probably this has been asked a while ago, but it's just too late that I realized that when I go in, I should know how much I need. So what if at the end of the period, let's say I asked for 2,000 and then I only used 1,500, what will happen to the 500?
You have the right to keep the 500,
Oh, okay.
which means you can bank it on the ship that you have put into the pool.
So you will still, let's say you bought from me 700.
Okay.
We signed the contract. I'm like, okay. But you only used, as you said, 200.
Mm-hmm.
So we will declare this pool and the pool will be verified. And then you will still keep your extra 500 and you will decide which vessel will you bank it on, or if you will distribute this across several vessels.
Okay.
And so they start the next year with this excess
got
that
it,
you
got it.
distributed. Yeah.
Max. If we take that 15,000 pool, for example, so you're saying there is one seller who is controlling that 15,000. Let's say we have one buyer now who wants 2,000, who is bidding, let's say 250, exactly what he wants. Fine. So the seller will then click accept. That 2,000 is promised at 250 to that buyer. Tomorrow, the 15 goes down to 13. It's still listed as 250. Buyer number 2 comes, says, I also want 2,000. I only want to give you 210. So you might end up with, even though you have one seller at 15, you may have 5 different buyers who not all have paid 250.
That's correct. Yes.
So you can have different prices you agree. That's up to the seller to then choose.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's negotiation, basically. And okay, if you decide you want to pay 250 and someone else asks for 220, then it's on you that you ask for 250, basically.
So if I'm a seller using this platform, it would be best for me because I will be seeing all the
You will be seeing your offers that you receive, right, your bids. And you will see the overall fuel index, price index. You will not see the individual transactions of other sellers that could give you a further idea on what's currently happening. You only see the combined index.
And as a buyer in that 15,000 pool, I cannot see the price that the other buyers in that pool.
Okay. Yes. So you only see your own transaction values, let's say. All right.
Actually, once the transaction is done, you enter into a contract, and that means that you have basically, let's say, agreed upon being in that pool for that compliance rate.
Yes.
So you are not allowed to go to another pool, right? Because pooling, info pool is just kind of. So, am I allowed, let's say, in December to go to another pool?
You are allowed to go into 2 pools. You are not allowed to not be in this one. I mean, you cannot be in this one, but then you still need to pay because this is the contractual agreement that you had, right? You just didn't take up the surplus, and the other guy is happy because he receives money from you and keeps the surplus. But you can go into a second pool. For example, if in contrast to what you said, you need more than what you anticipated, you have several ships in this pool, and then you need 200 more. Then you can go on the marketplace again, buy into a second pool, take one of the ships out of the first one and put in a second one to take up the other 200 that you need. That is possible.
So the vessel has been in 2 pools, right?
No. The agreement is 2 pools, but you need to distribute your vessels to these 2 pools.
One vessel can be in 1 pool.
Yes.
Once in a year.
But what is stopping the seller from removing his vessel from one pool to another?
The seller can happily also move the vessels around, but he has, of course, the contractual obligation to deliver the amount of surplus that you bought. Otherwise, he will need to reimburse you for your non-compliance cost.
So in the contract, you've mentioned the vessel name. You've also agreed that this vessel will be in this pool for the specific year. And so obviously it's not supposed to move to another.
No, in the contract, you agree on the amount of surplus, not on the particular vessel name. Because let's say I created some surplus and then I have an issue last part of the year with my vessel, which means now I can't consume surplus creating fuels anymore. I need to consume HFO for whatever reason. That will put down my surplus because it's based on the whole operational year. Right? So everything I do after I did the trade will also influence what I have. In that case, you as a buyer actually benefit from the surplus seller having the flexibility to move vessels around, because then you can say, with this one I sold 10,000, but now I only have 7,000, but I have this other vessel where I have 12,000. So I put this one into the pool in order to service the agreement.
Sorry if I missed it earlier. So the kind of entry to this system or license, or is it to the DOC or the ISM holder, or is it ships wide, or?
It's to anyone who has the pooling rights. So if you are a charterer, you have some long-term charter vessels, then you have the pooling rights for these vessels and you can onboard the vessels on the platform and do the trade. If you are the owner The vessels are on short term, for example, you have the pooling rights, and then the owner can onboard the vessels on the platform.
So whenever we are onboarding, there is the entity that has the pooling rights. They have the executive power. If you want to have alignment across different stakeholders down the chain, they can add emails of the other ones involved, but then they have the viewing rights. And we are defining that on the vessel level as well, so that everyone can track what's happening with their vessels. But then they cannot execute. Only the one that has the executive power can execute.
Sorry, can you explain the process when it's time to officially pool? The pooling will happen in Thetis, right? Okay. So how are we gonna decide that is MRB? Because these vessels are like under different ISO.
Yes, so this is my favorite question, because right now the FuelEU database does not exist since, EU is slow, so it has not been developed yet. So we have limited information on how this is actually done. In my best case scenario, I can be the representative as BetterSea on all of the pools that have been created on the platform, and I report it and you just sign it off. In the worst case scenario, I send out a document of what needs to be put in by the responsible entity, and they need to copy it into the system themselves because I'm not allowed to represent them. Whether that's possible or not, we can only know once the FuelEU database is out. So this is the only, let's say, question mark in the process that we are still facing. All right, since my pool partner is here, I'll do a trade with Gordana. Okay. I'll bid on 224. Because Gordana already said this is a nice pool. It's validated data. It's a ship owner.
I actually have a different account. So we are both in the demo version, but there's two different companies. So now it's gonna send me an offer.
All right. So now I need to define how much I want to pay. Gordana is asking for 250, but I know that the ask price, the bid price is currently 185 to 200. So I try my luck with 190. And then I would want to define how much I want to buy. Gordana is selling 2,500. And it appears that I actually have a vessel called Gordana, so I'll take that one into the pool.
That part was not planned.
And I'm asking for 1,800, so I have a bit of a buffer for the deficit that Gordana currently has. My total price for this pool would add up to 342,000 euros. And I send the offer. Now I can track the offer under my trades. Here I have an overview over my bids. And I have just sent it, as we saw, 1,800 tons for 190 to Gordana's pool 224.
And I have received it in also my trades, but under different. And now it looks okay. So this is the type of the ship, then the amount they want to buy at the price. Okay, I think I'm okay with that. I just accept the offer.
Or you can make a counter offer.
Not yet, but we're working on that.
For sure.
Yes. Yes. So right now I can deny and then they can bid again. But we are working on the counter offer. And so it says, okay, successfully accepted on my side. You might need to refresh yours. And now it also shows up under a different screen here, because then I had as a listing, but now I will have it as an accepted offer when it loads. So now I have this new one, 224, and now I can track the status of this one. So I accept it, and
here it is.
Wow, you are very active, Max.
I'm trading a lot. Yes, so here we see the one that was accepted, now showed up unaccepted offers. And now, as we saw before, I can check the status of my trade. So now the bid was accepted and I will receive the contract now automatically into my email, and Gordana will also get the same. And then we sign it and we go to the next step accordingly. And that's how the process leads you through the system until everyone is compliant. Now, I was talking a lot. Any questions, thoughts?
Is individuals allowed to join the pool without any ships?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
I as an individual can join the pool, take some allowances, keep it in hand, and next year when the price rise, I can sell it back to the pool.
You need a vessel, or let's call it, you need the rights, the pooling rights over a vessel in order to actually take up this surplus. So you cannot hold it as just a company and then take it over next year and sell it. You need to have a vessel where you can bank it on in order to move it to the next year. You can, of course, be, we had the discussion yesterday, you could be a Grab taxi company and you know a ship owner and you have agreed that you get the pooling rights for his vessel. Well, then you could, as the Grab taxi company, buy surplus, use the vessel that you have the pooling rights for to bank it on and go into the next year to sell it.
To be clear, we are mainly dealing with shipping companies. So on our side, we don't get into this exotic zoo. But,
yes. But that's also the purpose why on the marketplace we show you whether the counterparty is a shipping company or not.
Yeah, I asked because there are no proof that vessels are, we cannot see the vessels. So we don't know whom we are dealing with.
And on Gordana's screen that you may have not seen because it was small, when you review the contract, the bid, then you see the vessels that were put in, but of course not the MO number ship name. When you receive the contract, you see the name of the counterparty. So then you would see, is it Grab Taxi Singapore 1 or is it Maersk? If you accept the bid is not set in stone yet, only once you sign the contract. So you still have the option to, this guy I actually don't like, so I will not sign the contract, and then it expires.
that's why at this stage it's screening. So the status was also showing accepted bid. So the next stage is this contract, right? And then I see, okay, this is Max. I can also do my own KYC on top of BetterSea's KYC if I want to. If I see maybe it's a broker and I don't want to deal with the broker, I can say, okay, I don't want to. If it's not signed within 14 days, the contract expires. So there's no, you're not bound to do anything. Then you go on and bid to another one. Only when you actually sign, the marriage is concluded, and then you are together for the rest of the year.
I can bid maybe 2-3 places at different prices and cheapest one I think.
Yes.
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 Yeah. All right, since we were discussing the price, generally, in order to get access to the platform, there's no access or subscription fee. So it's free to join. And then once you actually do a trade and it's accepted, then you pay a transaction fee to BetterSea, which already includes the standard contract, the escrow account setup, and the pool verification. Since you are NorthStandard member and we have a collaboration, you benefit from a reduced transaction fee as a NorthStandard member.
So whether I'm a seller or a buyer, the standard fee is the same.
The buyer pays the fee, yes.
How much is approximate percentage of the?
4% is the transaction fee.
But this included the pool verification and everything. And then that is kind of the non-discounted price. And then NorthStandard members have a...
And once you, if the pool ultimately collapses, so you will get back the price, but the transaction fees.
Yeah, the transaction fee stays, but yeah, because we will still help you get into a different pool, etc. So we will not leave you hanging.
That actually happens automatic. So if the pool collapses, and your vessels are not covered, then they automatically bid at that moment in time on all of the available offers. So then we can help you find another option.
Or you pay the fees on a new pool.
Yes, but this is your non-compliance cost, which would then be covered by the first one who caused the collapse.
How will this platform be helpful for a company which has got many ships and a large fleet? How will this, I mean, do you work for them? I mean, you will offer to them as well, or it's basically for small ship owners who've got 2, 3, and they need to collaborate with other ship owners?
No, in fact, we have a wide variety of different shipping companies. So we have some selected customers on our website where there are big companies like HMM, for example, or Norden, but there are also small companies with only 2, 3, 4, 5 ships. In both cases, they can benefit from the platform. The big guys would usually always create an internal pool first with all their amount of ships. Sometimes they distinguish between long-term charter and owned, etc. So you have the option to create different pools, as you can see. And then often they have the internal strategy that they start with biofuel or they directly buy on the marketplace. So if they are missing anything when it comes to compliance balance, then they can use the pools that they have created to engage on the marketplace accordingly. So it doesn't really matter whether you have 700 ships or 3 ships, because overall, if your pool is non-compliant, the cheapest option at the moment remains the pooling.
You can also do, like, let's say you start one just internal, then you take a few of your vessels and you have an agreement with the charters. Maybe you have different agreements. So then you will start a few more pools just with your charters and then like cover some of their ships as well. And to do that through the invite function, and then you have some more extra. Here you will go to the marketplace and buy. Maybe you will have to do the work on behalf of some clients. In that case, you can have a designated pool just for that, so that you can just put their vessels in and execute on the marketplace, for example. So the beauty of it is that it helps you, like we have features to cater to all these different use cases, but you have one place where you can get a hold of what is happening, and you have a single platform to use it for internal purposes, external purposes, for alignment purposes, deal reconciliation, whatever you want.
But for the internal purposes, there won't be any charge for that. It's only if you buy.
Yes.
Yeah, that is like we decided to go with that model. So if you sign up and use it only for internal purposes, never externally trade, then good for you, then it's free.
Any further thoughts?
A lot to process.
2 more questions, I believe, but this is brilliant. I think are you all the first doing it? I mean, I've not heard, so pardon my ignorance. Are you all the first group of people doing this, or there are others?
We were the first, and then I think that's why we are so ahead in the game. There are more platforms and players doing some level of it. Also, like we have a lot of partnership back to OceanOpt as well. So they have a different platform. They also, as mentioned, deal with more of the data input side of things. And whoever uses their platform has the extension of all these features for the marketplace and everything else. So in that sense, kind of like we, I think, are the ones who have the end-to-end process the most complete. And then if through partnership, it looks like there's more of that, but it comes from the same source. And then there are different companies that usually stop at the matchmaking part. So like you can find a match, but then the pool tracking and everything else is not taken care of. And then there are all these different, as mentioned, players in that slide that provide the service, but not necessarily a way to de-risk the whole process.
what are your next steps? So you're continuously developing the platform.
Yes.
Anything you can share on what is in the pipeline?
Mhm. Well, we are always updating to, for example, cater to these suggestions like, okay, can you cap it? Can you, in that sense, there's continuous improvements on FuelEU. Of course, we are almost, we are ready for IMO, but we personally decided not to speculate. So we are waiting for October decision. And then if it happens, then we are ready and the platform will be able to support that in terms of the infrastructure. We can already do that. We have some additional stuff to cover voluntary carbon market and additionality. So that is cooking in the background. And depends of the NorthStandard partnership, maybe we will get some additional ways to de-risk the process.
Just on that, I think Mark's got a contribution to make.
Mark, welcome back from the
Yeah, sorry, I've had various different meetings I've had to jump in and out of. But have you had the chance to discuss the potential of the Pool Plus product or not? I know
Not
you've been
yet,
busy
so you can now announce it.
Okay, I mean, basically, I'll allow Gordana and Max to describe further. But one of the things we'd really appreciate keeping confidential, but as we're looking to possibly provide an insurance cover for vessels that break down or groundings or other unfortunate circumstances, particularly on the deficit side. So that so I'll allow Gordana and Maximillian to suggest how that works, and we really appreciate you keep that confidential. But what we're hoping to do is to canvass opinion across our members to see if that would be a product that would be of interest to yourselves. So far the reception has been good, but obviously we're just looking to see if it would be of interest to any of yourselves, So for example, if you were providing surplus to another party and you had a breakdown or a collision, then you wouldn't be able to fulfill your requirements and provide the surplus to the deficit party. So we would look to provide some sort of form of insurance cover to cover that gap. I don't know if that's something that's of interest to yourselves, but we would love to hear back from you if it is.
Just insurance covers to, I mean, what in case the carbon deficit is not satisfied that way, or we are talking about?
You make a contract with a vessel and the vessel has grounded undergoing repairs for next 3 months, 6 months. So how do the buyer guarantee? Because seller will not be able to sell the contracts which he has promised, right? So the buyer is left.
But wouldn't that be covered by my H&M?
The default amount which the seller has to, I think that is the cover for. The seller is covered.
So the Pool Plus product would be a bundle of, okay, all these reasons that may cause you not to adhere to the contract, and they're in most cases related to technical breakdowns. So in this sense, let's say if it's December, we are all in the same pool, we are all on track, great, and then one of the ships is grounded, all of us potentially suffer, right? So in that sense, the Pool Plus product would ensure that, so that the financial liability is taken care of. And this can happen on both sides, right? It can happen from the side of the surplus seller or the buyers, because it also surplus seller was also fine, but then there was an engine breakdown and they sold what they predicted to have, but things happened and now they're not able to deliver, but the contracts are still all in place, and then that would affect everyone in the pool. So the Pool Plus product would take care of these situations.
You could basically ensure the financial liability that you have as a contract party has for any events that you didn't cause on purpose.
So the premium, how they allocate the premium between the partners.
So basically, for example, if the surplus that was agreed on cannot be delivered, you as the surplus seller would be exposed to the non-compliance cost of the buyer because you didn't deliver the surplus, right? If that was caused not by your own default, but because it was grounded, whatever, then you basically have the financial liability still due to the contract. And here the insurance product would come in and say, look, you have insured yourself for this cost. In that case, the insurance product takes over the financial liability and pays the non-compliance cost of the buy.
This is integrated to the platform.
That is, as Mark said, will be integrated in the platform, and we are currently working on this extension.
So please add your feedbacks to it so that we can make it stronger. The idea is to provide that as an additional product service embedded. And of course, this is the opportunity to shape it because we are structuring it. We are trying our best to also predict what can happen, but it's great when we get the inputs of the members to make it strong.
What happens in the case if you're a charterer, say you have the rights on the surplus or on the credits, you put that into the pool, you go into an agreement with somebody else, then somehow the charter party gets dissolved for whatever reason. What happens then with the agreements that you had?
So in that case, the charter party agreement should make sure to pass on the pooling rights to the next entity that would be relevant, right? So it's a bit of there's the pooling agreement on one hand, and then there's the charter party agreement. The pooling rights are always governed in the charter party agreement, and there would need to have some sort of solution for such a case. The pooling agreement we can transfer. So we can say, okay, the new one is now the guy, the surplus has been agreed upon. If you want, you can take it up. On the other hand, the charter party would need to serve it with a different vessel, for example.
And we do further discussions. We have some cakes. But we can let go of those people,
Yes, I think.
hardcore leftovers that are still online.
We really appreciate it.
Mark, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And if
Oh, I
if
saw
any of
Alvin
you
away.
are if any of you
Sorry,
are
Mark?
interested in this Pool Plus product, please let us know because any feedback would be gratefully appreciated on this and just help us to get the product moving. So thank you very much. And remember,
The feedback I can also provide here, if I may, is because through our platform, because it's integrated with BetterSea and we have white label, we have some of our clients already getting access to a lot of pools. So they are much, I would say, in a more advantageous position because they know the prices and they are already making those strategies because they are using our product. And because we are the platform and providers for, let's say, verifying the data with the classification societies. So it works in multiple ways for their advantage. Just wanted to put that across. Yes, at least we are somebody who have really seen that in action. Just for information.
Thanks. Sir. Would you all be sharing the slides with us? I mean, the PowerPoint.
Yeah, there are also plenty more slides that you haven't seen on trading strategy. So you have a lot to dig into.
One interesting part is the process flow, right? That you had shown. That would be really interesting for clients to see because this is something that so first is you go into the pool, you buy a sign and sell your signs. Till the time you get the FuelEU, you'll see something that everybody would be interested.
Yes.
And also to just add on to the complexities of that, like for the financial part of it and to embed it as a part of the platform, we worked with the largest escrow provider, like technology, and they customized their APIs and system for us and for this purpose. It took 9 months. So that is how much work it took last year to just enable like 3 steps on this little flow.
That's your big selling point because other platforms are not doing those additional steps.
Yeah, and like it's all kind of like really going into the depths of it and challenging our thinking even before. Okay, like how can we address that? How can we address that? And so that made the platform quite strong, and there's so much into it once one knows what it takes. So and that's difficult to see at the first glance because everyone is also getting familiarized with just the basics of it. For the good or bad, we were like in this for years, so it's too much of FuelEU.
But I think the platform is also much more transparent. We also did our little bit of background check before partnering with BetterSea. So the other FuelEU marketplaces which are there hold a lot of non-transparency aspects also, if you see. So if you could venture out and see other marketplaces, but there is a lack of transparency there and getting all the information that you get. So
Yeah, it's actually the trust in the trading environment that our customers report is the decision point for going with BetterSea.
And possibly another compliment is I see the UI. I haven't used it, but I still see it's quite straightforward compared to a lot of labels I've recently seen. And thank God you all don't add the word AI to it, because nowadays everybody wants to add AI.
Thank you.
It's simple to understand. What is there only is there.
I think it keeps crashing the laptops. They're not used to AI and all that stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks those online.
Thank you.